Okay, so I'm going to talk about phylogenetics here. Now, when it comes to the snake, now here's a linear fashion of how our skeletons had to logically evolve as mammals. All the mammals it'll lay a pathway for all mammals as our skeletons are evolving toward the end here. And then you can see all the precursors. Now, what's funny is they have every one of these animals going backwards. I'll get to that in a second. First, we have to talk about the snake. Now, they say it's a lizard that had 4 limbs and lost its legs and became the snake. Now, that's ridiculous because, again, when it comes down to evolution, the first thing when any vertebra, the head and the spine are going to be the first things to evolve. Logically. This is logical. This is skeletal evolution. Because skeletal evolution, there are only limited variations of skeleton. Because a lot of many species like frogs, no matter what species it is, basically all have the same skeleton because they're a frog. Monitor lizards, a Nile monitor, Komodo dragon, they have the same skeletons. All of the squamates, iguanas, water dragons, they basically have the same skeleton. So I'm just saying there's a limited variation of skeleton. So you have to understand the skeletal evolution and explains evolution. Then once you have the skeletal framework, you can start connecting the dots with DNA. Who's related to who, what percentage. But still, the snake evolved from an eel because it had to have a head and it had to be a long animal first because that's what we are. We're worm-like. All animals are basically worm-like. They have a mouth, they have an anus. The food goes in, digests, and comes out. Now, granted, most mammals and most animals, in fact, including snake, have a larger right lung. And the left lung has 2 lobes, whereas the right lung has 3. This is very early in evolution. That's because the animal has to be able to fit the lungs inside its cylindrical body. And that's going to be a residual phylogenetic trait that we're going to have way down the line. And so are all these other mammals. Now, by understanding every time they say something basically lost its limbs, I'm thinking, let's see how many times they do this and say this and what pattern we find. So we have an eel-like animal, which is the ichthyosaur, which is a fish lizard that was actually predicted or theorized in 1939 or 37 by Friedrich von Huene that it was an amphibian. And when you do the phylogenetic traits of amphibian, mammal, reptile, it's what I call a super amphibian. It's a sub-reptile because it has mammalian traits. It just has a reptile skull that's more advanced than an amphibian. So it's a super amphibian. Now, this, they say, lost its legs. Wait, what? 250, 300 million years ago, it lost its legs? Okay, well, okay. Well, let's get down here to Archaeoceti, which are proto-whales. Again, it's a type of whale, but it's not quite a whale yet. Wait, they lost their legs too? We get to the whale. Well, everybody knows that they say the whales lost their legs. The Sirenian. Well, logically, the front limbs here are starting to evolve, but I guess it lost its limbs too. Then the hind limbs were evolving through the pinniped. Wait, they say they were a carnivoran that lost its limbs and became more aquatic. But basically, in osteological evolution, the skeleton, the head and spine are evolving with little limb buds. And over time, the limb buds turn more into flippers and actual hand bones. Aquatic hand bones, but nonetheless, they're hand bones. And they even have the same hands and arms that humans do. They're just more for water. And these guys were actually coming out doing the same thing. They'd all came out of the water. About every 100 million years, these animals come out of the water. They're doing the same thing then that they do now. It's no different. So ultimately, whales come onto the scene because these guys are in the water evolving. Of course, they're passing genes to come out of the water while they still stay in the water, further evolving. This is why the blue whale is the largest animal on Earth, but it's like one of the newest. It's the blueprint of what's going to be the next few 100 million years of mammals. Because it's the largest animal. It evolved slower than the other ones. And when I say passing genes to come out of the water, it's not like the whales just evolved out of the water and there's no more whales in the water. It means they just passed mutated genes. They're more adapted toward shallower waters and ultimately more land-derived. So logically, we have 1, 2, 3, 4 limbs, okay? Then we have a vestigial tail. Yeah, I know that looks funny. Now, we have found mutated snakes that actually have limbs. You can look that up yourself. They sprout vestigial little limb buds. And a lot of people argue, well, we have legless lizards. That still doesn't mean anything. It could have still worked the other way. Perfectly, as a matter of fact. Legless lizards, in fact, enforces this idea. See, we get hung up on epigenetics, but phylogenetics is where all the animals are related from the same core. The epigenome is more like the molding around the core that suits the environment.